Chapter 6 Reading Club. Upon entering the classroom, Kushiapa asks, "Are you ready? We have already formed an active citizens club and a wildlife conservation club. In the same manner, let's form our reading club straight away." Afterwards, all of them sit together to form a committee consisting of a required number of members. They also make ground rules and start their work by preparing an action plan for the whole year. On the first day, they take Kushiaba to the library as part of the action plan for the reading club. There they become members of the library so that everyone can borrow books of their choice from the library. They will be reading those books. Throughout the class hour, they sit in the library and happily read some books. The outcome of the formation of this club is amazing. Nowadays, every one of the class joyfully reads books and roams around in the world of boundless joy. Evaluation. Now let us evaluate our activities connected to the reading club by filling out the self-assessment table attached below. After participation in the club activities. 1. I have read at least 3 books. Strongly agree, somewhat agree, or disagree. 2. My interest in reading books is increasing. Strongly agree, somewhat agree, or disagree. 3. I share with others what I learn from the reading books. 4. I have a list of books that I want to read in future. 5. I encourage others to read books. 6. I enjoy reading books a lot. 7. By reading books, I have learned many new things. 8. I believe the club has benefited from my activities. Evaluation. How are our club activities running? At the end of the year, using the table below, we will analyze the activities of our club and our learning from the club. To do so, we will take help from our teachers. This evaluation will help us participate more efficiently in the club activities in future. From tribal activities to independent states. Nilonto has sat on a seat next to the window. Through the window, he can see a flock of birds flying freely in the open sky. Annesha comes and sits next to him. Nilonto has not even looked at her for once. Annesha inquires, "What's wrong? What are you looking at?" Nilonto gets startled and looks at her. Lost in thought, he replies slowly, "I am watching the open sky, the land of clouds and the birds flying. I am also thinking about the story of Dalim Kumar I heard from my grandfather last night." Annesha says, "I have also heard the story of Dalim Kumar many times. One king's son was Dalim Kumar. Their kingdom was quite vast. They had elephants in elephant stables and horses in horse stables. They went to wars with a huge number of soldiers. He rescued a captive princess from the clutch of a man-eating monster." Nilonto is still wandering in the world of thoughts. He asks Annesha, "Was there really such a king in the past? Were there real kingdoms and princes? Is there any such thing at present? Is Dalim Kumar's story true?" Shadin, another friend of theirs, sitting at the back benches, laughs aloud and says, "Do you want to be a prince, Nilonto?" Nilonto doesn't join in the laughter. As before, he calmly utters, "No." Annesha now says to Nilonto, "Kushiapa will take our class. She knows everything. If you ask her, you will know all the truth. Now I also want to know about it. A long time ago, our country was run by kings, wasn't it? What kind of people were those kings? Did they really fight using so many elephants and horses? How were the common citizens in their kingdom? Were they really present in the past? Or are all the stories we hear made up by people, or these simply just fairy tales?" After listening to their conversation, many of the class look at them with great interest. They also want to know about this now. When Kushiapa comes to the class, Nilonto stands up first and asks questions one by one. Kushiapa smiles sweetly after hearing the questions. She says, "There are many stories spread orally among the general people. Some of these may be true, and some may be completely imaginary. But if you really want to know about the past of these people, you have to read history. You should know that history and fairy tales are not the same. Fairy tales are fictional stories made up by people. On the other hand, history is the collection of past experiences of people. In addition to our grandparents and great-grandparents, many years ago their predecessors also lived. For thousands of years, our predecessors have been on this earth. The continuous description of their deeds, activities, or lifestyles will become history. History will reveal itself only when we try to know the past in the light of reliable sources and evidence. History is not just a description of princes, kings, or kingdoms. History is a very enjoyable lesson. How people have sustained their existence on earth for millions of years, brought about agricultural and urban revolutions, invented language, society, culture, and religion, built kingdoms and states, and reached the present day is known by reading history. Through history, we know how people were in the early ages, and how they roamed in the forest and hunted animals. We know how they slowly built clans from small groups to survive against various odds. Renu wants to know, what is a Gotro, Appa? Appa starts speaking. Millions of years ago, people were not in the same situation as today. All the experiences of present age were unknown to them. They did not know how to build houses like present-day people. They did not know how to store food for a long time. They could not even produce food. They lived by hunting various animals and collecting fruits from the forest. They took shelter in the cave. However, not all the places have caves to offer shelter. Humans used to survive by fighting the ferocious forest animals and conquering the adversities of nature. In order to survive, they used to form small groups and travel together to collect food. This group is called a Gotro, tribe. Each tribe has elderly man as its leader. If there was a conflict in the tribe, he would settle it. He would see that everyone in the party was getting proper food and security. When the adults went hunting, he decided where the younger ones would stay and who would guard them. For a long time, people did not know the techniques of farming. Hunting weapons were also blunt. Humans gradually gained experience about fire by seeing various forest fires and lava eruptions from volcanoes. By rubbing stones against the stones, they invented the technique of lighting fires. They understood that fire provides warmth in the winter nights and light in the darkness of night. Wild animals run away in fear when they see fire. The taste of food increases when it is burnt. Seeing all these, humans learn to use fire in their daily life. Millions of years, fire has been one of man's main weapon and shelter. Human life in the primitive world was very slow. Whatever they saw in nature, they gradually used it for their own use through various events. They lived this way for thousands of years and gathered various experiences. So far, you have learned how people came to understand the use of fire. Now let us discuss a new interesting topic. In the early days, the main struggle of human survival was to gather food. With the discovery of agriculture and farming techniques, the struggle for food production began. The human lives changed. Humans had to wait for millions of years to bring this change in life. The first revolution in human life, invention of agriculture, happened by women. Men hunted and women mastered production techniques from crops around their settlements. While hunting, many people died from the bites of poisonous snakes and insects and attacks from wild animals. Again, it cannot be said that enough food could be collected all the time. Each tribe spent all its talent and energy in collecting food. However, as gradually learned to cultivate, the concern about the food lessened. Earlier, when hunting was done, when the forest animals and fruits decreased, they had to leave the place and move to a new place in the hope of gathering food. Eventually, instead of a hunter-gatherer and transit life on the move, people began to settle down more or less in one place. This is how the tribal system proceeded. The lifestyle changed from hunting to animal husbandry. Then the invention of wheel changed human life completely. From research, we know that about 10,000 years ago, in several regions of the world, people left the hunting life and began to settle and cultivate. The introduction of agriculture was the first revolutionary event in human history. This period is therefore called the period of agricultural revolution in the discussion of history. To this point, you have understood about human food collection and production systems. Along with production, people also learned to store food. When people started stockpiling food, inequalities in distribution of food within tribes and societies began to emerge. This inequality added a new dimension to the history of human survival. The more food resources a tribe stored, the more power, prestige, and dominance they tend to exert over people. By stockpiling food, one class of people became the aristocracy and began to dominate the common people. The urban revolution came after the agricultural revolution. From this time, humans started to discover and use letters of alphabet. Written records of human activities emerged. Historians say that urban civilization began in history from this time. The cities gave birth to kings, royal families, and the so-called aristocracy, who were a privileged select group of the time. You must have understood that they have been placed in this select section because of their wealth, power, and authority. There was no place for common people. Let us now know how civilization started in our Bengal region in the early days. The way urban civilizations developed in different parts of the world, like Egyptian civilization, Sumerian civilization, Maya civilization, Chinese civilization, and Harappan civilization of Indian subcontinent. You will know more about all these civilizations and Bengal as a region in your inquiry-based reader. However, it is worth mentioning here that Bengal was a geographical region surrounded by geo-natural boundaries and include independent Bangladesh, the Indian state of Western Bengal and Tripura, and parts of the states of Bihar, Odisha, Assam, and Meghalaya. In this land, cities were built in the course of thousands of years of history. Here, Bengali language, society, and culture emerged. Some elite classes occupied the land and the people, and they made kings and kingdoms, fought wars repeatedly, and the victory of the common people began after defeating the ambitious opportunists. As a continuation of history, in a political border of the eastern part of the Bengal territory, the state of independent sovereign Bangladesh emerged in 1971 under the leadership of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Now we will know about a few cities of this Bengal region and the early civilization centering on those cities. They are important in the history of Bengal. Examples include Pandu Rajar Dibi, the mound of King Pandu, and Pundranagar. The mound of King Pandu was built in the western part of the Bengal region, on the bank of the river Ajoy Bardwan district of present-day West Bengal, India. It started with the original non-Aryan speaking people living in the Bengal region, and Pundranagar was built in Mahastangor on the banks of Karatua river in Bogura district of present-day Bangladesh. You may notice one thing. At that time, every famous city was established on the bank of any river. Rivers were the main means of communication. Rivers were used to transport goods and people from different areas of the city. People used to spread from one place to another by river and sea routes, and trade continued by these routes. You will be surprised to hear that around 2,500 years ago, this type of trade communication started with the cities of Bengal and different countries of the world, including Europe. When the sailors and traders from the Europe came to do business in Bengal, many wise and virtuous people also came. They have also found some manuscripts written by those people. By reading the manuscripts, many interesting and important information about the people of Bengal region in ancient times have been found. Everyone in the class has listened to Khushiapa with rapt attention. Now Khushiapa says, "Now surely you have understood how ancient people left the nomadic life on hunting and gathering. Then they established permanent settlements and entered the urban life. We shall now begin to know more about the initial period of history in our Bengal region. Before going to the details of the history of Bengal, I would like to tell you a few more things about the ancient people. You will also understand very easily that history has to be known through various evidences or sources. You can learn more about this in the inquiry-based reader. Anyway, can anyone tell me when people first settled in the Bengal region? How can you know about these people?" From the back row of the class, Salima speaks out, "Fossilud." Khushiapa says, "Yes, Fossilud." Look at the rest of the class. Appa asks, "Can any of you tell me what Fossilud is?" 4 or 5 students raise their hands. Looking at the Nandita sitting in the middle row of the class, Appa asks, "What is Fossilud?" Nandita says, "Fossilud is a type of wood that has been left in the nature for thousands of years and has slowly become solid like a stone. In ancient times, people used fossilwood to make tools in places where stone was not freely available." Abba becomes very happy to hear the answer. Asking Nandita to sit down, she starts talking. Fossilwood is called Jiboshokat in Bangla. In ancient times, people used various tools to hunt animals and protect themselves. Tools were made of stone, wood, and fossilwood. Since our country has no hilly land and no stone, humans in this region made weapons out of fossilwood as it was hard as a stone, and then they used it as a weapon. Tools used by early humans have been found in several places in the Bengal region. Stone tools used by ancient people have been found in Medinipur, Bankura and Burdwan district of West Bengal. Scholars have investigated these tools. They believe that people using these stone tools settled in Bengal about 10,000 years ago. Some fossilwood has been found in Chaklapunji in Hobiganj and Lalmai Moinamuti in Kumilla. Humans around 1500 BCE used these fossilwood tools. For more details, you can read your inquiry-based reader. The land of Bengal region was fertile since ancient times. There were many fish in the river. There were various fruits in the forest. Also, there were many dangers for people here. There were crocodiles in the river. There were poisonous snakes, tigers, and other ferocious animals and insects in the forest. Due to the influence of monsoon, more storms occurred here. The people of Bengal region had to acquire the ability to survive in these adversities. All the places in Bengal where the tools used by ancient people have been found are marked by a slight elevation from the surrounding areas. In the ancient times, the river of Bengal were more raging. There were numerous rivers spread like nets, and likewise there were thick forests and jungles on land. People therefore chose the higher lands along the banks of the rivers bordering the forest as their dwelling place. Establishing a city by cutting down trees and jungles was not a fairy tale. For the people of Bengal region, it was a bare truth. We came to know from the epics written in Sanskrit that in ancient Bengal some Janapadas, realms or settlements were established even before the establishment of states and kingdoms. We know from the different books written in the Sanskrit language that there were many Janapadas, namely Banga, Pundra, Radha, Godha, Samatata, and Harikela. Each of these Janapadas were known as a historical geographical unit. A historical geographical unit means that each Janapadas were a settlement of a group. However, each of them was significantly different from the other in terms of experience and geographical location. These Janapadas had no specific border. For example, Pundra is one such Janapada. You have just heard about Pundranagar. Pundra is the oldest city in Bengal. People who bore the name Pundra were the inhabitants of Pundra Janapada. Their city was called Pundranagar. This city was established in ancient times and its present-day location is at Bogura in Bangladesh. Again, Bogura Janapada was established with the people who bore the name Banga. Present-day, Dhaka, Faridpur and Borishal together were a part of Banga. In the west, sometimes the border lines of Banga were spread towards present-day Kolkata. In the eastern part of Banga, another ancient Janapada was located named Samatata. This Janapada included the present-day Kumilla Noakhali areas of Bangladesh and the Tripura of India. These small Janapadas were the final political unit of Bengal. The people who lived in these Janapadas mostly belonged to the Austric language family. Besides, people of 2 or 3 language families like Dravidian, Chinese, Tibetan, and Burmese were also present. Over thousands of years, these people established Janapadas and lived there with their language, religion, and culture. And as far as we know, most of them were the ancient inhabitants of Bengal. You should know that in different parts of the Bengal region, many small ancient ethnic groups were present like the Kol, Bhil, Shautal, Shabar, Pulinda, and Nishad. Following these ancestors, the ancient Janapadas of the Bengal region advanced through the path of history. Questions may arise in your mind that, like, why the total population of indigenous small ethnic communities is significantly fewer than of others. Besides these indigenous groups, there are crores of Bengali-speaking people. How did they come to Bengal? What is their identity? All the students in the class along with Nilanto are listening to Khushi Appa's narration of history. Appa says more than 30 crores people are living in the Bengal region. Only in our country, we have 17 crores of people. Most of the people of our country are Bengali-speaking Bengalis. In the course of the history of thousands of years, people of different physical sizes and shapes are from different language families together constituted the Bengali community. This Bengali community is thousands of years old. Considering the language structure, Bengali is 1,500 years old. From the prehistoric age, people came to Bengal in search of faith, food, and business. They lived here in harmony, though they had different languages, religions, cultures, and ancestry. Though the people of different regions were mixed with the passage of time, some indigenous ethnic minorities were able to retain their ancient culture. Likewise, Bengalis were also able to retain their culture and linguistic heritage of thousands of years. Moreover, all the people of Bengal created history by showing survival skills against the adversity of water and jungle. And they showed extraordinary adaptive skills gained through experience. In the making of this history, geographical effect and control over it bear paramount importance. Standing up, Anisha asks, well, in the eastern part of the Bengal region, our Bangladesh became independent in 1971. Were there kings and kingdoms in this region before that? If so, what was their identity? Did they always fight wars? Did they always grab food and wealth? Khushi Appa replies with a smile. The story of the prince and the king is still running in your head. She continues. Kings, princes, princesses, and kingdoms can be seen in different ways in the ancient history of different parts of the world. Our Bengal region is no exception. However, the holder of the titles of emperor, Raja, Badshah, Sultan, Nawab were the so-called elites. They were busy promoting their own name, fame, authority and glory. Many ambitious elite warriors from different parts of the world entered the Bengal region, occupied the territory and resources and imposed their language, religion and politics on the people here. They paid no attention to the will and reluctance of the common people. Examples include Maurya kings, Gupta kings, Shen kings, Khalsi kings, Hussain Shah Sultan, Nawab Murshid Kali Khan, British and Pakistani rulers. Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the architect of independent Bangladesh, was the only leader who emerged and led through the true soil, mud, rivers, stream, bill, haur, bore, rain and greenery of the Bengal region. Before him, no other leader who emerged from this land in the history of Bengal worked for the liberation of the common people, for maintaining love and harmony among all the people of all religions. You have got an idea of how from ancient times till 1971, new dynasties, settlements, people of new languages, religions and culture came and dominated the Bengal region. Many, however, have faced resistance while expanding their occupation and dominance. Despite the many obstacles created by the elite ambitious people, the common people here have been living together for thousands of years, regardless of their caste and religion. Common people have developed their own language, society, culture and politics after overcoming many obstacles. Looking at Onnesha and Nilanto, Khushiappa says, "You know that ancient towns of Bengal were built mainly by the Austric, Dravidian, Chinese, Tibeto and Burmese-speaking people. The first major shock to these towns came when the Aryan-speaking people established a powerful empire called the Maurya Empire in the North India. As many of you may have heard, the Greek warrior Alexander invaded northwestern India in 327 BCE. His Indian campaign ended with the conquest of parts of northwestern part of India. Shortly after Alexander's departure, an emperor named Chandragupta Maurya rose in northern India. He built a powerful empire called Maurya Empire. The Mauryas were Aryan-speaking elites. Around 3500 BCE, they settled from Central Asia to the northwest region of India. Gradually, they moved eastwards towards the Bengal region by dominating the original inhabitants of India. To discuss the Mauryas, you need to know about the Aryan language and some books written in this language. The Sanskrit books Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vedas, Puranas were written by Aryan-speaking people. Aryans were the first to establish an institutionalized religion in India. This religion had its own scriptures and its own culture. At that time, the people of the institutional region and culture looked down upon everyone outside their society. They occupied new territories and tried hard to establish their own religion and culture there. The names of two ancient towns of Bengal, Banga and Pundra, are found in Mahabharata written by Aryan-speaking people. A few other texts written by Aryan-speaking refer to the people of Banga and Pundra as bandits, barbarians, low class, etc. Can the inhabitants of any region be degraded in this way? We all are humans. Human identity comes first. It is quite inappropriate to humiliate or disrespect someone by boasting about nobility, power, language, religion and culture. Texts written in Aryan languages have always viewed their language, religion and culture as superior and non-Aryan language, religion and culture as inferior. On the contrary, it was these non-Aryan language communities who created the well-organized society and civilization in the Bengal region, the proof of which is the mound of King Bandhu. which you have already known. But you will see that whenever a new language, kingly power and religion entered the eastern part of India, for example the Bengal region of the distant lands, they belittle the people of these non-Aryans and mention them in their books with disrespect. This arrogance of some Aryan-speaking elite people is not acceptable in history. However, let us go back to the discussion of the mighty Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta Maurya, Bindusara, Ashoka were the most powerful emperors of this dynasty. The Mauryan emperors occupied the northern part of the Bengal and annexed it to their rule. We know this from an inscription found in Mahasthangarh. In ancient times, kings used to engrave their edicts on stones and send them to the different provinces. One such edict has been found at the Mahasthangarh archaeological site. We call these inscriptions because scripts were written on rocks or stones. After the Mauryas, the Gupta dynasty established powerful empires in northern India. Among the emperors of this dynasty were Chandragupta, Samudragupta, Chandragupta II, etc. In the middle of the 4th century, Samudragupta invaded the Bengal region and captured the towns like Banga, Pundra, etc. During the reign of Chandragupta II, the son of Samudragupta, the Gupta territory extended to the eastern bank of the Meghna river up to Samatad. At this time, the Aryan-speaking people were actively involved in the Brahminical religion in Bengal. The gods and goddesses of Brahminical religion tried to dominate the folk religious practices of the common people of the Bengal region. The religious practices of this reign were also influenced by folk elements. They worshipped the nature including trees, stones, fire, and snakes. People following Brahmanism took the ultimate initiative to establish their own religion and gods by discarding these elements of nature. Many of the original settlers in the Bengal region accepted it. Again, the folk practice of worshipping the natural forces from ancient times has survived a lot. In this way, the old religion and culture of the original inhabitants continued to mix with the Brahminical religion and culture. As you must understood by now, the settlements lost their name and existence due to the Mauryan and Gupta invasions and came under the powerful empires of North India. The Gupta emperors became weak for a time. Their empire collapsed. Two kingdoms named Banga and Gauda were formed in Bengal region. The center of the kingdom of Banga and Kotalipara of present-day Gopalganj district of Bangladesh, Gopachandra Dharmaditya, Dawatra Ditya and Samachara Deva ruled here from the 6th century. On the other hand, the location of the Gauda kingdom was present in West Bengal, Malda, Murshidabad, Birbhum, and Burdwan areas of India. However, it cannot be said that their boundaries were always the same. As the power and rule of the kings increased, the boundaries also changed. Sometimes the kings of these kingdoms conquered new areas through invasion. Sometimes the boundaries of their kingdoms were reduced due to the invasion of kings of other regions. The famous king of Gauda was called Shashanka. Kushiapa draws the attention of the students to the ancient administrative systems and says, "You have to remember that when the Mauryas and Guptas came to dominate here, they created some new administrative units and framed their government structure. At that time, there were administrative units called Bhutkis, Bishoy, Mandals, Bithis, and Grams. These are similar to what you see today as divisions, district, unions, etc. Also, the emperor used to send great warriors and commanders from the center of the empire to manage affairs. These rulers settled permanently in the Bengal region. Along with them, new religions and cultures, many scholars, priests, and business people came. Along with the expansion of the territory, they also worked to spread the new religion and culture. This went on for a long time. Whenever there was a disturbance in the central empire, or when the emperor became weak, many of the high-ranking military officials of the Bengal region declared themselves independent. Then they cut ties with the center. You will see that most of the kings, whose names you know will find in the Bengal region, entered the region from far beyond the borders of the Bengal territory. Do you know what that means? It means that original inhabitants of the Bengal did not have royal power in their hands. They were ordinary commoners. The biggest challenge for them was to save themselves from the hostile nature and ferocious animals. So whenever a taste was established in the Bengal region, it was led by an elite administrator or an ambitious warrior coming from a faraway region. During the entire period of Bengal's history, from ancient times to 1971, some ambitious aristocracy have repeatedly dominated Bengal. They came from the regions of North and Northwest India, Turkey, Persia, now Iran, Uzbekistan, and later from Europe and Pakistan. Following the accounts written by the court poets or historians employed by the occupiers, even today a class of historians are writing the history of superiority and glory of these occupiers. In those histories, almost the entire experience of common people in the land of Bengal is missing. You will know these things when you grow up and read more history. You will understand how few people of the elite class, regardless of caste and religion, repeatedly played the game of determining the fate of the common people at their will. The political history of Bengal is a history of reappearance of such incidents. Standing up, Anisha asked to Khushiapa, in ancient times, what other religions were there in the territory of Bengal apart from Brahminical religion and culture? In reply, Khushiapa says, I told you about institutional religions. You have also known that the common people of our land used to practice folk religion. This time, let us briefly learn about another popular religion and culture. This is Buddhism. It is also an institutional religion and has a strong cultural aspects. Buddhism originated in 600 BCE through Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. During the reign of Deva, Pala, Chandra kings, Buddhism gained great popularity in the Bengal region. The Pala dynasty ruled the northern and west northern part of Bengal for about 400 years. During this time, many educational centers were established in the Bengal region. These educational centers were called Bihar. Buddhism and other scriptures were taught there. The people living in the cities of the Bengal region gradually started accepting the Buddhist religion and culture. It quickly spread among the common people. In view of this, various aspects of the original folk religion of Bengal entered Buddhism. Thus, many branches of Buddhism were introduced in Bengal that were different from Buddhism in other regions. The original inhabitants of the Bengal region worshipped various gods and goddesses and natural forces. Buddhism did not have the rule of worshipping gods and idols. However, the people of Bengal region accepted Buddhism and established various idols of Gautama Buddha himself. Therefore, it can be seen that whenever a new religion and culture came to Bengal, the people of Bengal region adopted it as their own. Besides, the new religion and culture retained the 1,000-year-old culture as well. As a result, whenever the institutionalized religion entered Bengal, people ignored the strict restrictions of religion and adopted folk customs to make it a folk religion. After the Palas, in the middle of the 11th century, the Sena kings from Deccan, India occupied the Bengal region. It is known in history that Vijayasena was the first king who was able to unite and rule the entire region of Bengal in ancient times. The Brahminical Sena kings imposed religious strictness on the one hand and on the other hand created the golden age of Sanskrit literature. During the Sena period, the influence of Buddhism in the urban life of Bengal decreased and the dominance of Brahmanism increased. On the other hand, the imposition of orthodoxy and strictness of Brahmanism led to a social revolution among the common people of rural Bengal. Scholars believe that a section of lower caste Hindus and Buddhists converted to Islam as a result of revolution. In 1204 CE, a new kingdom emerged again in the western part of Bengal. An ambitious warrior from distant Turkey took possession of a large part of our Bengal territory. He is Ikhtiaruddin Muhammad Bikhtiar Khulji. The Khulji dynasty established the Brahminians who conquered Nadia and Gouda after destroying several bihars and educational institutions and defeating Kings Lakshman Sen. Their capital was established at Lakhnauti. The language, religion and culture of the Khilji kings were very different from the language, religion and culture of the common people of Bengal region. The Khilji warriors and kings were followers of Islam, but the people of the Bengal region were followers of Brahmanism, Shaivism, Vaishnavism and popular folk religions. Through the gradual campaigns of Pirs, Sufis, dervishes and sultans, Islam quickly became familiar to the common people of Bengal. The sultans of Delhi and the Mughal rulers deliberately made regular grants of tax-free lands in the waters and forests of Bengal. Thus, their policy of land expansion helped increase the number of Muslims in the Bengal region. Later, various other political and social events played an effective role in promoting and developing Islam and its culture. The customs and cultural practices that began thousands of years ago, when people first settled in this land, never have been completely abandoned by the common people. This is why it can be seen that despite the presence of different religions, castes, languages and cultures in Bengal, all the people here bound by a wonderful bond of harmony and fellowship. Identity as humans has always been more important here than any religion. From Chandidas to Lalun, Rabindranath Tagore, Kazi Nazrul Islam, everyone sang the praises of harmony. Chandidas, the famous poet of the Middle Ages, wrote, "Man is the truth, and there none is above him." As you grow older, you will have the opportunity to read the political history of the Bengal region in a wider scope. However, one thing must be remembered, that you cannot know and understand the people of this land just by reading the history of kings and emperors. If you want to know the people, you have to know people's culture, customs and traditions. Bengal was fighting for supremacy with North India. Different dynasties ruled each part of the Bengal. The territory of Bengal was being occupied from the outsiders. This is how the social and cultural history of the Bengal region has changed over time. You must have heard about the Battle of Plassey in 1757. After this war, the English East India Company took control of Bengal. Company people ruled India, including Bengal, for 100 years. In 1858, by removing the company, the ruling power of Bengal was taken directly under the British Raj. The British occupied Bengal for almost 200 years. In the past, fortune-seeking warriors and various royal powers came to Bengal from outside. In most cases, they settled here and mingled with the local people. As a result, people's protests were less, but the everyday life and rituals in life were greatly influenced by the forces. The British were more focused on extracting the resources of this land rather than settling here. They collected more revenue and forced common people to cultivate indigo in the farmland. As a result, people began to revolt against the British in a great way. Because of these revolts and resistance movements, the British were eventually forced to leave this subcontinent. We have to remember that a new religious culture entered the subcontinent with them. The same happened with the previous elite kingdoms. In Bengal, people's language, food habits, clothes, and so many other things of European culture are present. These seem familiar to everyone now. You have seen that the people of Bengal from the beginning were occupied and dominated by so-called elites of the regions around Mediterranean Sea, Persia, and some other regions of the world. The fate of the people of the Bengal region had almost always been determined by the opportunistic so-called aristocracy coming from distant lands. The people of non-Aryan language and culture of this land were repeatedly exploited. Those who were at the center of power were only concerned with their own name, fame, and benefits. They made religion a political tool to achieve their own benefits. The elites used religion for their own needs since ancient times. Evidence of this can be found in royal documents of the Pala and Shen periods, also land purchase and transaction documents of the sultans and Mughal rulers, and official documents of the British and Pakistan periods. When the British partitioned India in 1947 and went back, the elite politicians here took the initiative to build a new political identity based only on religion. They abandoned the 1,000-year-old tradition of Bengal. The eastern part of the Bengal region was named East Pakistan, which was completely inconsistent with history. In the darkness of opportunistic politics of some elite politicians, the original name Banga got lost. On the contrary, the name Banga was based on many diverse experiences of the people living in certain territory over the course of thousands of years. Then, in response to various events, independent sovereign Bangladesh emerged in 1971 under the leadership of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.